The dust swirled around Veltar's feet as he walked across the barren surface of Kepler 442c. The planet looked dead from space, and it felt dead on the ground too. No wind, no life, just endless gray dirt and rocks that stretched to the horizon. But the energy readings from their ship told a different story. Something was buried here, something that had been hidden for a very long time. Veltar touched the communication device on his neck. Team Alpha, are you getting the same readings? I am? Confirmed, came the voice of Dr. Kesra, his second-in-command. The energy signature is about 50 meters below us. It's big, whatever it is. The Zephyrian Archaeological Consortium had been studying dead worlds for over 200 years. They found ruins, old buildings, sometimes even ancient spaceships. But this felt different. The energy pattern was too organized, too purposeful. It reminded Veltar of active technology, not the random echoes of long-dead civilizations. Begin excavation protocol, Veltar ordered. But be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. The excavation machines hummed to life, their plasma, cutters slicing through layers of compressed dirt and rock. Each layer they removed was like turning back pages in a history book. The first 10 meters showed normal planetary deposits, nothing unusual. But at 20 meters, they found the first pieces of metal. Sir, you need to see this, called out Nexpo, the team's materials specialist. He held up a twisted piece of dark metal that gleamed despite being buried for centuries. This isn't Zephyrian. It's not Valdorian either. I can't identify the alloy composition. Veltar took the metal fragment and examined it under his scanner. The readings made no sense. The metal was stronger than anything in their databases, but it showed signs of being manufactured with techniques that seemed both advanced and primitive at the same time, like someone had built incredible technology using basic tools. As they dug deeper, more pieces emerged, strange geometric shapes that might have been building parts, tubes that looked like they could carry water or air, and everywhere, symbols that none of them could read. The symbols were simple, almost childlike, but they appeared on everything with a consistency that suggested a unified civilization. At 35 meters down, they found the first intact structure. By the stars, whispered Dr. Kesra. It's a building. A complete building. The structure was rectangular and functional. No decorative elements, no artistic flourishes. It looked like it had been built for survival, not beauty. The walls were made of the same strange metal they had been finding, welded together in a way that suggested the builders had been in a hurry. Look at this. Nexpo pointed to one wall. These aren't normal construction techniques. See how the metal is fused here? This looks like emergency repair work, like they were trying to seal something in, or keep something out. Veltar felt a chill run through his scales. Emergency construction meant crisis. Crisis meant desperation. And desperate, civilizations often did dangerous things. They spent 3 days carefully exposing the building. When they finally managed to cut through what appeared to be a door, the atmosphere that escaped made their scanners go crazy. The air inside had been sealed for centuries, but it wasn't empty. It contained traces of organic compounds that suggested recent habitation. Recent? Veltar stared at his scanner. Define recent. Within the last 100 years, Kesra replied, checking her own readings. Maybe less. That was impossible. Their orbital scans had shown no signs of life on this planet. No heat signatures, no electromagnetic emissions, nothing. Yet here was evidence that someone had been living here just decades ago. Inside the building, they found rooms filled with equipment that defied easy explanation. There were machines that looked like computers but built with components that seemed oddly familiar, yet completely foreign. There were weapons that had clearly been maintained and used, and there were sleeping areas that showed signs of long-term occupation. But it was the walls that made Veltar's blood run cold. Every surface was covered with markings. Not the simple symbols they had found outside, but complex charts, diagrams, and what looked like star maps. The star maps showed the local galactic region with frightening accuracy. Systems were marked with those same simple symbols, including systems that the Zephyrian Empire had only discovered in the last 50 years. Sir? Nexpo's voice was barely above a whisper. Look at this section. Veltar followed his pointing appendage to a wall covered with what looked like portraits. Faces stared back at them. Strange faces with 2 eyes instead of 3. Flat features instead of scaled ones, and hair growing from their heads in wild patterns. Below each face were those simple symbols, arranged in ways that suggested names or identifications. These are individuals, Kesra said. This is a record of people who lived here. But what kind of people? The faces didn't match any known species in their databases. They were unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered, yet the technology around them suggested intelligence, organization, and, most disturbing of all, military preparation. On the 4th day, they found the data core. It was hidden behind a wall panel that had been sealed so carefully that they almost missed it. When Nexapo's scanner detected the hollow space behind the metal, they cut through with extreme care. What they found inside was a crystalline storage device unlike anything in their technology databases. The crystal was warm to the touch and pulsed with a faint internal light. When they connected it to their analysis equipment, the data that emerged made them question everything they thought they knew about this dead world. Text appeared on their screens in those same simple symbols. But their translation software, after hours of analysis, began to make sense of the patterns. Words emerged, sentences formed, and slowly, impossibly, a story began to unfold. Day 11,247 of the long wait. The first translated entry read, "Still, no word from Terra. The Council believes we have been abandoned, but Commander Hayes insists the plan remains in effect. We continue to maintain the installation as ordered." Terra. The name appeared again and again in the entries, always referenced as home, as the source of orders, as the place they would eventually return to. But where was Terra? No system in their databases matched that name. Day 11,889 of the long wait. Food supplies are holding steady. The hydroponic gardens are producing better than expected. Dr. Chen says we can maintain current population levels for at least another 100 years if necessary. But the younger generation is asking questions. They want to know why we stay hidden when we could make contact with the local species. Commander Hayes has forbidden any external communication. Local species. Veltar felt his stomach turn. These people, whoever they were, had been watching. They knew about the Zephyrian Empire. They had been here, on the edge of Zephyrian space, observing and staying hidden for thousands of days. The final entries were the most disturbing. Day 12,156 of the long wait. The signal came through this morning. All stations are to implement Phase 1 evacuation procedures immediately. Commander Hayes seemed almost relieved. She said the waiting was finally over. We begin packing the essential equipment today. The non-essential material will remain as directed by Protocol Omega. If anyone finds this record, know that we were here. Know that we were waiting. And know that we have gone home to prepare for what comes next. The data core went dark after that entry. But the date translation made Veltar's knees weak. According to their calculations, that final entry had been made only 47 years ago. Less than 50 standard years. Whoever these people were, they had been here recently. They had been watching the Zephyrian Empire for over 30 years of local time, and they had left according to some predetermined plan that involved something called Protocol Omega. Veltar looked around at his team. All of them wore the same expression of growing dread. They had not discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization. They had discovered evidence of recent, organized and apparently military activity by an unknown species that had been secretly observing them for decades, and now those observers had gone home. 3 weeks had passed since the discovery on Kepler 442c, and Veltar had not slept properly since. The research station orbiting the dead planet buzzed with activity as teams of specialists worked around the clock to decode the mysterious data core. Each new translation brought more questions and deeper concerns. Dr. Kesra hurried into the main analysis chamber, her scales flushed with excitement and fear. "Veltar, we've made a breakthrough. You need to see this immediately." The main display screen showed a complex timeline that the translation team had pieced together from hundreds of data fragments. The simple symbols that had seemed so primitive now revealed themselves as an incredibly efficient writing system. Every mark had meaning. Every arrangement conveyed information with remarkable precision. According to these records, Kessera began, pointing to the earliest entries on the timeline. This species calls themselves humans. The colony was established 847 standard years ago during something they call their first expansion wave. Veltar studied the timeline. 800 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire had been a small collection of worlds, barely capable of interstellar travel. That's impossible. No species achieves interstellar capability and establishes colonies that quickly. It takes centuries of development. That's not the strangest part, Kessera continued. Look at this entry from year 3I94 of their occupation. She highlighted a section of translated text. New intelligence confirms Zephyrian expansion into Sector 7G proceeding as predicted. Council recommends maintaining observation protocols. No direct contact authorized until Phase 2 implementation. The words hit Veltar like a physical blow. They were watching us. 400 years ago, they were already watching us. Nexpo looked up from his workstation across the chamber. It gets worse, much worse. We've found references to dozens of other species, the Valdorian Republic, the Centaurian Coalition, the hegemony of Crix. They have detailed files on all of them. Military capabilities, expansion patterns, diplomatic tendencies, even personality profiles of individual leaders. The implications were staggering. While every known species had been developing naturally, making first contact with each other, through normal exploration and expansion, this human species had been watching them all, studying them, planning around them. "Sir," called out Dr. Yixtal from the xenobiology station, "I've been analyzing the physical descriptions and genetic data from their records. These humans are unlike any species we've encountered. They're adapted for multiple environments, they reproduce quickly, and their physical capabilities are unusual." Veltar walked over to examine Yixtal's findings. The genetic profiles showed a species that seemed almost designed for survival: high adaptability, rapid healing, extreme endurance, and most disturbing of all, what appeared to be natural resistance to most known toxins and diseases. "They're survivors," Yixtal continued. "But not just survivors. They're survivors who plan ahead. Look at this medical data. They were vaccinating themselves against diseases that don't even exist on this planet. Diseases that are specific to Zephyrian biology. They were preparing to fight us," Veltar said quietly. "Even when they had never met us, they were preparing to fight us." The next discovery came from the communications specialist, Endar. She had been working to understand the colony's connection to something the humans called Terra. "I've found multiple references to something called Protocol Omega," she announced. "It appears to be some kind of master plan that all human colonies were following." The room fell silent as Endar displayed her findings. Protocol Omega was not just a plan. It was a comprehensive strategy for species survival that had been developed before humans had even left their home world. The protocol assumed that humans would eventually encounter hostile alien species and laid out detailed steps for ensuring human survival under any circumstances. Phase 1 was observation and preparation, Endar explained. Establish hidden colonies throughout the galaxy. Study alien species without making contact. Develop countermeasures for every potential threat. Phase 2 was what they called controlled introduction. Make contact with alien species while appearing to be a young, inexperienced civilization. Join galactic communities as junior partners while secretly maintaining military and technological superiority. Veltar felt sick. "We made first contact with humans 60 years ago. They joined the Galactic Council 40 years ago. We thought they were newcomers to space travel." According to these records, Endar continued, human colonies had been operating for over 8 centuries by the time they made first contact with us. They already knew everything about our military capabilities, our trade routes, our political structure, and our weaknesses. The final piece of the puzzle came from the technology analysis team. They had been studying the equipment left behind in the colony and their findings painted a picture of a civilization far more advanced than they had appeared to be. This communication device, reported tech specialist Morgan, holding up a small crystalline unit. It's capable of instantaneous communication across galactic distances. Our best technology still requires relay stations for long-distance communication. This single device could reach anywhere in the galaxy. These weapons, he continued, indicating a rack of devices that looked deceptively simple, use energy, principles that we don't fully understand. They're more efficient than our military-grade plasma weapons, but they're constructed from materials that should be primitive by our standards. And this, he said, pointing to what looked like a basic fabrication unit, can manufacture complex technology from raw materials. It can literally turn dirt and rocks into starship components. Veltar stared at the evidence laid out before them. The humans had not just been hiding colonies. They had been hiding technological capabilities that exceeded anything known to the galactic community. While pretending to be a young species learning from their alien neighbors, they had already mastered technologies that other species were still trying to develop. What about Phase 3? Veltar asked. The records mention Phases 1 and 2. What comes next? Endar's expression grew darker. That's the problem. The records suggest that Phase 3 would only be implemented if humanity faced an existential threat, if they believed their species was in danger of extinction. The final entries mention something called final preparations, she continued. The colonists were recalled to Terra for final preparations, but we don't know what that means. Dr. Kessera had been studying the star maps found in the colony. I think I know, she said softly. Look at these charts. They don't just show our local systems. They show the entire galactic arm. And look at these markers. She pointed to hundreds of small symbols scattered across the star map. Each symbol was placed on systems that the Galactic Council had classified as uninhabited or unexplored. Those aren't uninhabited systems, Kessera said. Those are hidden human colonies. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. This wasn't just one secret outpost. This was a network. The revelation hit the research team like a wave of cold water. Humans had not established a few hidden colonies. They had quietly seeded the entire galaxy with hidden installations, all following the same protocol, all preparing for the same eventual conflict. And now they're all going home, Veltar said, his voice barely above a whisper. Every colony is being evacuated for final preparations. The question that nobody wanted to ask hung in the air. What were humans preparing for? And more importantly, what had convinced them that the time for preparation was over? As if responding to his thoughts, the communication system crackled to life. A priority message was coming through from Zephyrian High Command. Research Team Alpha, this is Admiral Kixeran. We have received similar archaeological reports from 17 other systems. All show evidence of recent human habitation. All show signs of organized evacuation. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. You are to return to Zephyr Prime immediately. Veltar looked around at his team. Each face showed the same realization. They had not just discovered evidence of human deception. They had discovered that the deception was ending. After 8 centuries of hiding in the shadows, humanity was revealing itself. The question was, why now? The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like it. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a din of anger, fear, and confusion that echoed off the crystalline walls. At the center of it all sat the human delegation, 5 individuals who looked remarkably calm considering that their entire species had just been revealed as galactic-scale deceivers. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat with her hands folded, her expression unreadable as species after species demanded explanations. She was young for a human diplomat, barely 50 years old, with the kind of quiet confidence that had made her effective in previous negotiations. But today, that confidence was being tested like never before. Order. Order. The voice of counsel. Speaker Threx boomed through the chamber's amplification system. The massive hegemony representative struck his ceremonial staff against the floor, creating a sound that cut through the chaos. We will address this matter systematically. Ambassador Chen, You will respond to the accusations that have been presented. Sarah stood slowly, her movements deliberate and careful. Every eye in the chamber focused on her, some curious, others hostile. Honorable Speaker, esteemed representatives, I understand your concerns. However, I must state clearly that the human government was unaware of these colonial activities until your archaeological discoveries brought them to light. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Representatives leaped to their feet shouting, in dozens of languages. The Valdorian delegate, his crystalline form pulsing with angry red light, spoke for many of them. Unaware? You expect us to believe that your government lost track of hundreds of colonies scattered across the galaxy? The evidence suggests systematic deception spanning 8 centuries, added the Centaurian representative, her feathers ruffled with agitation. You monitored our species, studied our weaknesses, infiltrated our space, and now you claim ignorance, Sarah? Waited for the outburst to subside before responding. The evidence suggests that these activities were conducted by human groups operating outside government oversight. We are investigating these claims as urgently as you are. She gestured to her aide, who activated a holographic display showing star charts and timeline data. Our preliminary investigation indicates that these colonies were established during the early expansion period, before the formation of our current unified government. It appears that certain military and scientific factions acted independently. Convenient, sneered the Crixian delegate, his multiple arms gesturing dismissively. Very convenient that your government kept no records of the largest colonial operation in known history. But it was the Zephyrian delegate who asked the question that made the chamber fall silent. Ambassador Chen, our archaeological teams found evidence that these colonies were evacuated recently. Where did those colonists go? Sarah hesitated for just a moment. But in a room full of experienced diplomats, even that brief pause was noticed. We are still investigating that question. They went home, came a voice from the gallery above. Every head turned to see Veltar, still wearing his archaeological field gear, standing at the speaker's podium. They went home to prepare for Phase 3 of something called Protocol Omega. The speaker struck his staff again. Researcher Veltar, you are out of order. This is a closed diplomatic session. With respect, Speaker Thurex, this goes beyond diplomacy, Veltar replied. The colonists left behind detailed records. Protocol Omega was designed as a species survival plan. Phase 1 was secret observation. Phase 2 was controlled integration into galactic society. Phase 3 was preparation for species war. The chamber erupted again, but this time the anger was mixed with fear. The concept of a single species preparing for war against the entire galaxy was beyond anything they had encountered. Admiral Kexron, speaking from the Zephyrian Military Observer section, cut through the noise with his amplified voice. In the past 72 hours, we have confirmed human colonial sites in 43 systems, all evacuated within the last 50 years, all containing military-grade technology that exceeds known galactic standards, all connected by communication networks that we cannot intercept or decode. The implications sank in slowly. For 8 centuries, while the various species of the galaxy had been developing naturally, trading peacefully and building diplomatic relationships, humans had been preparing for war. They had studied every species, mapped every system, and positioned themselves strategically throughout the galaxy. The hegemony delegate, a massive creature whose voice rumbled like distant thunder, spoke what many were thinking. If humans have been planning for galactic war for 8 centuries, why reveal themselves now? What has changed? Ambassador Chen looked around the chamber, seeming to weigh her words carefully. I can only speculate, but perhaps the discovery of these sites forced their hand. Perhaps they never intended for this to remain secret forever. Or perhaps, said the Valdorian delegate, they have completed their preparations and no longer need to hide. That statement sent a chill through the assembly. If humans had spent 8 centuries preparing for conflict, and they were now willing to let their preparations be discovered, it could only mean that they believed themselves ready for whatever came next. The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Galactic Monitoring Network. The technician's voice, transmitted through the chamber's speakers, was shaking with disbelief. Council Assembly, this is Monitoring Station 7. We are detecting massive energy signatures from the Sol system. Repeat. Massive energy signatures from the Sol system. Whatever is happening there, it's unlike anything we've ever recorded. Sol system, the human home system. Every representative in the chamber knew the implications immediately. The speaker looked directly at Ambassador Chen. What is happening in your home system, Ambassador? Sarah's calm facade cracked for the first time. I don't know. Our government communications with Earth went silent 6 hours ago. We thought it was a technical malfunction. Shall I tell you what I think is happening? The voice came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human cultural attaché, who had remained silent throughout the session. She stood up, ignoring Ambassador Chen's shocked expression. Dr. Vasquez, Sarah said sharply, you are not authorized to speak for the human government. I'm not speaking for the government, Elena replied calmly. I'm speaking as someone who just realized that my government has been lying to me my entire life. She turned to address the assembly. I study human history and culture. It's my job to know about human expansion, human colonies, human military development. But everything I've learned today suggests that there's an entire shadow history that I was never told about. She gestured toward the data displays that still showed the colonial sites. Look at the evidence. These colonies weren't established by the government I work for. They were established by someone else. Someone who has been operating independently for centuries. Someone who has been preparing for this moment. What moment? Asked the speaker. Elena's expression was grim. The moment when humanity stops pretending to be a young, peaceful species and reveals what it really is. She looked directly at Sarah. The moment when Protocol Omega enters Phase 3. As if summoned by her words, another urgent communication came through the chamber's systems. This time it was from multiple monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. All stations report similar energy signatures, the coordinator's voice announced. We are detecting activation events in 17 systems previously classified as uninhabited. All signatures match the pattern from the Sol system. Repeat, 17 systems are showing signs of massive technological activation. The chamber fell into absolute silence. 17 systems, 17 hidden human installations, all activating simultaneously, all coordinating with whatever was happening in the human home system. Ambassador Chen sat down heavily, her face pale. For the first time since the session began, she looked genuinely frightened. I think, she said quietly, we need to contact Earth immediately. I don't think, said the Zephyrian admiral, that Earth is going to be taking our calls. Outside, the great assembly hall across the galaxy, monitoring stations tracked dozens of energy signatures as they came online. Each signature was massive. Each one suggested technology far beyond what humans had publicly demonstrated, and each one was coordinating with the others in a pattern that suggested unified command. After 8 centuries of watching and waiting, humanity was finally making its move. The only question remaining was whether that move would be toward war or something else entirely. But as the representatives filed out of the chamber to contact their home governments, one thing was clear. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of human deception was over, and whatever came next would determine the fate of every species in known space. Dr. Marcus Webb had worked in the Earth Historical Archives for 30 years, and he thought he knew every secret hidden in the vast underground complex beneath Geneva. But as he descended into sub-level 12, a section he had never even known existed until 3 hours ago, he realized that his life's work had barely scratched the surface of human history. The emergency had begun when the Galactic Council's accusations reached Earth. Within minutes, teams of archaeologists, historians, and government officials had been assembled with one desperate mission: find out what the hell had been happening in humanity's name for the past 8 centuries. The restricted access lift descended through layers of rock and metal, past archives that Webb had spent decades studying, into depths that were not supposed to exist. His security clearance, the highest possible for a civilian researcher, had been upgraded twice in the past hour. Whatever they were about to discover, the government was taking no chances with information security. "Dr. Webb," said Director Harrison, "from the Historical Research Division, what I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. Until 4 hours ago, only 12 people in the entire human government knew these archives existed. The lift stopped at sub-level 12, and the doors opened to reveal a complex that stretched beyond the range of their lights. The architecture was different here, older. The walls were made of materials that Webb didn't recognize, and the air had the weight of centuries. This section was constructed during the early 22nd century, Harrison explained as they walked through corridors lined with data storage units. Most of these records predate the formation of the United Earth government by over 200 years. They stopped at a massive vault door marked with symbols that made Webb's stomach clench. They were the same simple symbols that the alien archaeologists had found on the colony worlds, the same symbols that humanity had supposedly never seen before. Inside the vault, holographic displays came to life as they entered. Star maps filled the air around them, showing the galaxy as it had been 8 centuries ago. But these were not the maps that Webb knew from standard historical records. These maps showed human presence throughout the galaxy, long before official first contact with alien species. "The continuity," Harrison said quietly. "That's what they called themselves. A shadow organization that formed during humanity's first steps into space. They believed that contact with alien species was inevitable, and that humanity needed to be prepared for the worst-case scenario." Webb stared at the displays. "You mean they predicted that we would encounter hostile aliens? They didn't just predict it, they assumed it." Harrison activated another series of displays. "Look at this. The Continuity's founding document, written in 2157, 50 years before official first contact with the Zephyrians. The document that appeared was written in standard English, but the content was extraordinary. It laid out a comprehensive plan for species survival, based on the assumption that any alien contact would eventually result in conflict. They believed that any species capable of interstellar travel would view humanity as either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be exploited," Harrison continued. "So they created Protocol Omega." Webb read the document with growing amazement and horror. Protocol Omega was not just a military plan. It was a complete redesign of human expansion into space. Instead of the open, peaceful exploration that history books described, humanity's real expansion had been secretive, strategic, and militaristic. Phase 1 was preparation, Harrison explained. Establish hidden colonies throughout the galaxy. Study alien species without making contact. Develop technology that could counter any potential threat. They spent over 4 centuries implementing Phase 1. The displays showed colony after colony, each one carefully positioned to provide strategic advantage. Some were resource extraction facilities, others were weapons testing sites. Many were simply observation posts, watching alien species develop and cataloging their capabilities. Phase 2 was infiltration, Harrison continued. Make contact with alien species while appearing to be a young, inexperienced civilization. Join galactic communities as junior partners while secretly maintaining technological and strategic superiority. Webb felt sick as the implications became clear. Our entire relationship with the galactic community has been a lie. Worse than that, Harrison said grimly. Our entire government has been lied to. The continuity operated independently of all official human authorities. They had their own military, their own research programs, their own diplomatic corps. While we thought we were making peaceful contact with aliens, the continuity was preparing for war. The next revelation was even more disturbing. The continuity had not just hidden their activities from alien species. They had hidden them from humanity itself. The official human government, the one that Webb worked for, had been kept in the dark about their own species' true capabilities and intentions. How is that possible? Webb asked. How could an organization operate on this scale without government knowledge? Harrison led him to another display showing organizational charts that revealed the terrifying scope of the continuity's influence. They didn't operate without government knowledge. They operated as the government. Look at this. The chart showed connections between the continuity and every major human institution. Military commands, research facilities, colonial administrations, even educational systems. The continuity had not been separate from human government. It had been the real government, operating behind a facade of democratic institutions. The government we work for, Harrison said quietly, is essentially a public relations operation. The real decisions about humanity's future have been made by people we've never heard of, using information we've never seen. Webb stared at personnel files that showed thousands of individuals who had dedicated their lives to the continuity's goals. Scientists, soldiers, diplomats, administrators. An entire shadow civilization working toward objectives that the public had never been told about. What about Phase 3? Webb asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Harrison's expression grew darker. That's why we're here. 3 days ago, the continuity began implementing Phase 3. All hidden colonies are being evacuated, all preparation sites are being activated, and we still don't know what Phase 3 actually involves. They moved deeper into the vault where more recent records were stored. These documents showed the continuity's activities over the past 50 years during the period when humanity had supposedly been integrating peacefully into galactic society. They've been using our diplomatic missions as intelligence-gathering operations, Harrison explained. Every human ambassador, every trade representative, every cultural attaché has been unknowingly providing information to continuity analysts. Webb found reports that detailed alien military capabilities with frightening precision, strategic assessments of every major species, psychological profiles of alien leaders, economic analyses that showed exactly how to cripple alien civilizations without firing a shot. They know everything about our alien neighbors, Webb said. Military strength, economic vulnerabilities, political divisions. They could destroy the galactic community whenever they wanted to. Which brings us to the question, Harrison said, of why they're choosing to act now. The answer came from the most recent files, documents dated just weeks ago. The continuity. Leadership had concluded that their secret could not be maintained much longer. Advances in alien archaeological techniques, improvements in sensor technology, and increasing curiosity about human expansion patterns meant that discovery was inevitable. They decided to control the revelation, Harrison explained. Rather than be exposed by alien investigation, they chose to reveal themselves on their own terms. But there was more. The final document showed that the continuity believed humanity had reached what they called the point of no return. The galactic community had become too integrated, too interdependent. If conflict came now, it would be total. Species survival was at stake. Phase 3, Harrison said quietly, is not preparation for war. It's the war itself. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the ancient walls as automated systems announced a priority communication from Earth's surface. The message, when it came through, was brief and terrifying. All government personnel are to remain in secure facilities. The continuity has made contact with Earth Command. They are assuming direct control of all human military and colonial assets. Phase 3 is now active. Webb looked around at the centuries of secrets surrounding them. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for the galaxy? Harrison stared at the displays showing human colonies throughout the galaxy, all now active and under continuity control. It means that everything we thought we knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was wrong. We're not the peaceful newcomers we pretended to be. We're the most dangerous species in known space, and we've been planning for this moment for 800 years. The lights flickered as more systems came online throughout the facility. Somewhere above them, humanity was revealing its true nature to a galaxy that had no idea what was coming. The point of no return, Webb said quietly. We've reached it, haven't? Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the command deck of the CHS Prometheus, watching as humanity shed 8 centuries of deception in a matter of hours. Through the massive viewport, she could see the transformation of Earth's orbital space as dozens of hidden installations revealed themselves, rising from concealed positions like sleeping giants awakening from a long dream. She was no longer Dr. Elena Vasquez, cultural attaché to the Galactic Council. That had been her cover identity, maintained for 15 years while she served as a continuity intelligence officer. Now, as humanity entered Phase 3 of Protocol Omega, she could finally be who she really was, the operational commander of humanity's most ambitious project. Status report, she called out to her bridge crew, all of whom had spent years pretending to be civilian researchers, diplomats, or trade officials. All continuity installations are online and responding, reported her communications officer. We have confirmed activation from 847 sites across the galaxy. Colonial populations are at designated rally points. Military assets are deploying to predetermined positions. Elena nodded, her expression calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. For her entire adult life, she had been preparing for this moment. Every mission, every diplomatic function, every cultural exchange had been part of an intelligence operation designed to position humanity for exactly this scenario. What about the galactic response? Panic, mostly, came the reply from her intelligence chief. The Zephyrian Empire has placed all military units on high alert. The Valdorians are recalling their fleet to defensive positions. The Centaurian Coalition is requesting an emergency session of the Galactic Council. And the governments? Still trying to understand what's happening. Most of them don't realize yet that we've been watching them for centuries. They think this is a recent development. Elena almost smiled. Even now, after all the evidence had been laid out, the alien species were underestimating humanity. They were treating this as a diplomatic crisis that could be resolved through negotiation and compromise. They had no idea that they were witnessing the culmination of the most comprehensive strategic plan in galactic history. "Ma'am," called out the tactical officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting immediate communication with human leadership. Put it through." The main display activated to show the familiar chamber of the Galactic Council, but the scene was chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were shouting in multiple languages while Speaker Threx struggled to maintain order. When Elena's image appeared on their screens, the chamber fell silent. "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez," she said calmly, "speaking for the continuity of the human species. You wish to communicate with human leadership. Here I am." The Zephyrian delegate was the first to recover from the shock. "Admiral Vasquez, 3 days ago you were a cultural attaché. Now you claim to speak for all humanity?" "3 days ago, I was maintaining a cover identity while serving in my actual capacity as a continuity intelligence officer," Elena replied. "I have been observing and reporting on galactic affairs for 15 years. During that time, I have learned a great deal about each of your species." The implications of her statement sent a ripple of fear through the assembly. If their cultural attaché had actually been a military intelligence officer, what did that say about every other human they had dealt with? "What do you want?" asked the Centaurian representative, her feathers bristling with agitation. "Want?" Elena seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. "We don't want anything from you. We never have. Everything we needed we took centuries ago." She gestured to her tactical officer, who began displaying holographic star maps in the council chamber. The maps showed the galaxy as the alien species knew it, but now with additional markers indicating human presence. For 800 years, while you believed humanity was confined to a few dozen systems, we were actually present in over 2,000 systems. We established colonies, research stations, manufacturing facilities, and military installations throughout the galaxy. We studied your species, cataloged your resources, and mapped your weaknesses. The scale of the deception was beyond anything the galactic community had imagined. Humanity had not just been hiding colonies. They had been secretly present throughout the entire galaxy, observing and preparing while their official representatives played the role of inexperienced newcomers. Why? The question came from the Valdorian delegate, his crystalline form pulsing with confused light. Why maintain this deception for so long? Because, Elena said simply, we needed to know if coexistence was possible. She paused, letting that statement sink in before continuing. When humanity first developed interstellar travel, we faced a choice. We could expand openly, make contact with alien species immediately, and hope for the best. Or we could be cautious. We could observe first, understand what we were dealing with, and prepare for all possible outcomes. We chose caution. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every representative was beginning to understand the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. For 8 centuries, we watched your species develop. We observed your wars, your diplomacy, your expansion patterns, your treatment of weaker species. We learned about your cultures, your psychology, your capabilities, and we prepared for every possible scenario. Elena's expression hardened. What we discovered was not encouraging. The tactical display changed to show historical data spanning centuries. Wars between species, exploitation of weaker civilizations, territorial disputes that had cost millions of lives. The galactic community that prided itself on peaceful coexistence was revealed to have a much darker history. The Zephyrian Empire enslaved 3 species during its expansion phase, Elena continued. The Valdorian Republic strip-mined 17 systems, rendering them uninhabitable. The Centaurian Coalition has been systematically eliminating smaller species that compete for the same resources. The hegemony of Crix practices what can only be described as genocide against any species that resists their expansion. That's ancient history, protested the Zephyrian delegate. We've moved beyond those practices. Have you? Elena's voice was cold. Your current expansion into Sector 12 involves the forced relocation of the Manarian species. The Valdorians are currently extracting resources from systems that contain primitive life forms, without regard for the ecological impact. The Centaurians just finished pacifying a system whose primary crime was existing in a strategically valuable location. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. While the galactic community presented itself as civilized and peaceful, humanity's centuries of observation had documented a pattern of exploitation and violence that continued to the present day. So you see, Elena continued, we had to prepare for the possibility that coexistence would not be possible. We had to ensure that if conflict came, humanity would survive. The hegemony delegate, his massive form imposing even on the display, spoke with a voice like rumbling thunder. And now you judge us worthy of conflict? No, Elena replied. Now we judge you worthy of truth. The statement confused the assembly, but Elena's next words clarified everything. Phase 3 of Protocol. Omega is not war, she said. Phase 3 is revelation. For 8 centuries we have hidden our true capabilities while observing yours. Now we are showing you what we actually are. The tactical display changed again, this time showing real-time data from across the galaxy. Human installations were coming online everywhere, revealing technological capabilities that exceeded anything the galactic community had achieved. Our manufacturing capacity is approximately 50 times larger than your combined industrial output, Elena continued clinically. Our military technology is roughly 3 centuries ahead of your most advanced systems. Our population is distributed across the galaxy in a way that makes us essentially impossible to eliminate, and our understanding of your species is complete. Representatives sat in stunned silence as the implications became clear. We could have conquered the galaxy at any time in the past 4 centuries, Elena said. We chose not to. Why? The question came from multiple delegates simultaneously. Because, Elena said, we hoped that coexistence would be possible. We hoped that by the time we revealed ourselves, your species would have evolved beyond the violent expansionism that characterized your earlier development. She paused, studying the faces on the display. Recent events suggest that our hopes may have been premature. The speaker finally found his voice. What happens now? Elena's expression softened slightly. Now we see if the galaxy is ready for honest coexistence. No more pretense. No more deception. Humanity will take its place as what we actually are, the dominant species in this galaxy. The question is whether that dominance will be exercised through cooperation or through force. You're threatening us, accused the Centaurian delegate. No, Elena replied. We're offering you a choice. You can continue with the pattern of violence, exploitation, and territorial expansion that has defined galactic politics for millennia. If you do, you will discover that humanity is prepared for that conflict, and that the outcome is not in doubt. Or, she continued, you can accept that the balance of power in this